Sometimes skyscraper concepts straddle the line between highly ambitious and downright ridiculous. In this video, we'll examine the skyscrapers that were deemed too extreme to make the cut and were never built. This includes the building that was supposed to make the Empire State Building look tiny by comparison, the developers who claimed they could construct the world's tallest building in just 90 days, and the insane idea of a skyscraper so high that a vertical bullet train was needed for an elevator. Currently, only 2.3% of our viewers are subscribed to our channel, so if you enjoy our videos, make sure to click that button. Number 5. The India Tower. Starting with the smallest first, our first skyscraper takes us to Mumbai, India. In the early 21st century, Mumbai was a thriving city, but it was missing its landmark symbol. Paris had the Eiffel Tower, New York had the Statue of Liberty, and Mumbai was supposed to have the India Tower. Proposed in 2008, the building was initially set to be 301 meters high, but 2 years later the height was doubled to 707 meters. The building was designed by Foster & Partners, a UK-based architectural firm that designed many well-known buildings. Its futuristic design was to symbolize India as a modern and prosperous country. The India Tower was expected to have large observational decks on the 93rd and 4th floors. Including a dedicated VIP floor, a tuned mass damper would also be in place to absorb high winds. This technology is also found in other buildings, such as Shanghai Tower, Taipei 101, and even is used in Formula One race cars as well. Although this was an exciting opportunity, the giant India Tower did not come without its critics. Local authorities thought that the skyscraper was too tall and soon began a lengthy court battle against the developers. Eventually, the India Tower received the green light, and construction finally began in 2010. But just a year later, construction hit another brick wall. When the idea for India's mega skyscraper was born, the Indian economy was thriving, and the developers expected that it would stay that way. Unfortunately, however, once construction began, the Indian economy started to stagnate. One of the fastest growing economies in the world began to slow down, creating havoc for future developments. The developers soon ran into financial difficulties and were unable to pay their debts. In March 2011, the authorities imposed a construction freeze, and all building work came to a halt. By 2013, the investors decided to pull the plug completely. The developers were now sitting on an empty lot. A few years passed, and a slightly less ambitious project was launched. Instead of a single huge building, 2 60-story buildings were proposed. But this project didn't get off the ground either. Construction was abandoned a second time, and the Indian media described the site as jinxed for a decade. While India Tower was already highly ambitious, our next mega project was one that truly shocked the world. Number 4. Sky City. In 2012, a Chinese construction company made a bold announcement to the world. Not only will they build the tallest building in the world, but they'll do it in just 90 days. This building would be 10 meters taller than the Burj Khalifa, which took 6 years to complete at that time. The Burj Khalifa had just been unveiled as the tallest building in the world. Dubai's record-breaking domination would have ended, and the emirate would have had to settle for second place. But how could they have built at such an absurd speed? Essentially, they had prefabricated concrete blocks that just had to be lifted into position. It was like IKEA furniture, except that it was the tallest building in the world. Modular buildings were nothing new, but they had never been used for skyscrapers of this size. It was an insane proposal, towering 838 meters into the sky. The building would have been 220 floors and could have withstood earthquakes up to magnitude 9. In case of an emergency, 8-inch thick walls and triple glazed windows could have withstood some of the strongest storms ever recorded. Incredibly, they claimed that the building would house 30,000 people, and the idea that 30,000 homes could be built in just 90 days would be a complete game changer for the entire housing market. Not only that, construction costs were mind-blowingly cheap. For this building, it cost $1,500 per square meter to construct, whereas it cost $15,000 per square meter for the Burj Khalifa. It all seemed too good to be true. Construction was set to start in November 2012 once they got government approval. Within 90 days, the world would have a brand new tallest building. But 90 days came and went, and there was no building. As the months went on, people began wondering when, if ever, this building would come to life. In February 2013, a journalist from Forbes called the office of the developer firm. The company told Forbes that they could not disclose any information on the project. Suddenly, the project, which was desperate for publicity, was becoming incredibly quiet. As the months and years went by, the site of supposedly the world's tallest building was now a wasteland, growing weeds. By 2015, the foundations were full of water. So the locals had an ingenious idea. Using the water on the abandoned land, they decided to create fish farms. The local man who started the farm told news outlets, "I raise fish on the construction site. It's not in secret, but neither have I ever been stopped." And it didn't end there either. Locals started growing watermelons on the banks of the fish farms, with the access roads built for the construction site being used for growing grain, while Sky City was about new and innovative building techniques. Our next project was about building bigger and better, whatever the cost. Number 3. Azerbaijan Tower. In 2010, Azerbaijani businessman Ibrahim Ibrahimov was flying home from Dubai to Baku, Azerbaijan's capital city. He had just returned from an oil-rich city that had elevated itself onto the world stage by constructing beautiful and breathtaking buildings. He wondered if he could do the same in his hometown of Baku, which also had deep pockets due to its vast oil reserves. This was a 3-hour flight, and he had plenty of time on his hands. Rather than catching a movie or listening to music, he decided to sketch out his new vision for Baku. This involved artificial islands in the Caspian Sea, called the Khazar Islands, and its centerpiece would be the Azerbaijan Tower. But creating something similar to Dubai would not elevate Baku onto the world stage. To really put Baku on the map, Azerbaijan needed something even taller than the Burj Khalifa. Not only that, it needed to be bigger than every other building under construction. Ibrahimov decided that it would be 1,050 meters tall, meaning that it would be taller than the Burj Khalifa as well as the proposed Jeddah Tower in Saudi Arabia. With just this idea alone, he caught the attention of the New York Times. He told one reporter, "It will cost $3 billion just to build Azerbaijan Tower. Some people may object. I don't care, I will build it alone. I work with my feelings." Ibrahimov then told the press that if someone tried building a bigger building than his, he would build an even bigger one. The New York Times headline was, "Azerbaijan is rich, now it wants to be famous." Azerbaijan Tower would be surrounded by 55 artificial islands. These artificial islands would contain hotels, a yacht club, an airport of its own, and even a Formula One racetrack. The tower would cost $3 billion. Whereas the entire islands would cost approximately $100 million. Construction started in 2015 with the intention of completing the tower in 2019. However, Azerbaijan had become so rich from oil that it centered almost its entire economy on the oil and gas industry. When oil prices collapsed in 2015, so did the Azerbaijani economy. In the middle of 2015, Ibrahimov was about to board another plane. Except this time he was trying to flee Azerbaijan to escape the authorities who were trying to arrest him. But before he could get on that plane, he was caught by the police. He was temporarily arrested because of a $57 million loan he had failed to pay back. This loan was intended for the construction of the Khazar Islands. 2019 was the year that Baku was supposed to be home to the world's tallest building. That very year, a feasibility study was asked on what to do with the islands reclaimed off the coast of the city. But even today, there is still no sign of the project ever resuming. Number 2. The Illinois. Our next skyscraper takes us back to the 1950s. But despite being proposed several decades ago, this building is much bigger than any of the towers we've mentioned so far. In 1956, a famed Chicago architect named Frank Lloyd Wright invited a journalist from the Chicago Tribune to his home. He told this reporter that he was going to suggest a building for Chicago that is so big the Empire State Building would be a mouse by comparison. This quote alone was enough to make the headlines and lead to a packed audience during its unveiling 6 weeks later at the Sherman House Hotel in Chicago. Wright had proposed the first mile-high skyscraper, or 1.6 kilometers tall. The building would contain 528 floors and 76 elevators. In case the elevators ever broke, there would be space for over 100 helicopters too. He wanted to spread urbanization upwards rather than outwards. Instead of thinking of a skyscraper as something within a city, what if a building could become a city of its own? It would be used for office, residential, and hospitality use. You could live, work, and relax all under one roof. His proposal generated a lot of publicity. However, there were no serious developers willing to fulfill his dream. On the surface, to many developers this looked like a complete waste of time. But if you look closely at the designs, the building has a 3-lobe structural system, which was revolutionary at the time. Wright thought that buildings should be built like tall trees, with deep roots underground holding them up. This idea has been incorporated into many skyscrapers since, including the Burj Khalifa. So while he never got to design the world's tallest building, he still may have had a tiny part to play in the tallest building of today. And while the Burj Khalifa is Dubai's tallest building to date, the city is far from finished soaring towards the sky. In fact, they've proposed skyscrapers much bigger than the Burj Khalifa. Number 1. The Dubai City Tower. The Dubai City Tower was expected to be 2,400 meters tall. If built, the tower would have been almost 3 times the size of the Burj Khalifa and 7 times taller than the Eiffel Tower. For a building this tall, the elevators would need to be incredibly fast. So this building would have had elevators with the speed of a bullet train, traveling at 200 kilometers per hour. And like the Illinois, it's not just a building being proposed, but a vertical city. Each 100-floor segment of the 400-story structure would house a different neighborhood to reach these phenomenal heights. They proposed surrounding buildings to support the core building and protect it from dangerous winds. For every 100 floors, a separate adjoining building would be connected to the core building. These buildings were designed to twist around the inner building, meaning it would be protected from all sides. Dubai City Tower was proposed in 2009, but nothing has happened since and nobody knows why. Many have speculated that it could be financial difficulties, feasibility issues, or political matters. Or maybe like other buildings on this list, some things just weren't meant to be. What do you think? Would you like to see some of these buildings become a reality? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to AHM Top 10. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.